Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's me again, Chelsea, and today I'm going to be doing a recent reads video because for the past many months I have not been filming wrap-ups. So the purpose of this channel is to give you reviews of books, and I have not been fulfilling that purpose. And so with that in mind, I did put a post out on Twitter, like a poll, to say, does anyone even care anymore? Like, I have read over 20 books since my last wrap-up, which was for February, I think, and does anyone still care? And I did actually have quite a few nice people saying, yes, please just film it. So I'm going to film it anyways, and I hope you enjoy it. So if you are interested in what is potentially going to be a lengthy video talking about the various different books that I have read, then stick around, grab a snack and a drink, and let's dive into it. So I'm going to be talking about these books in the order that I read them, apart from two, because they are the second and third book in a series. So I can't really tell you a lot about them, but I can, you know, give you what I starred them, and then we can go from there. I also will not be going through what month I read these in, because if I'm honest, I've just written a list of all the books that I have read. I have also, oh, an important note, I will not be talking about any Swiftbow books, any Sphinx books, because I did read them as well in between these months. But for Swiftbow, I did separate videos for every single one of the finalists. You can find them on my channel. I will tag, I believe I've got a playlist. I'll tag that up here if you're interested in Swiftbow 9 reviews, and for Sphinx I didn't because they were novellas, so I will not be talking about them here either. We are on to the books that I read in separate months, I think, but we're going to talk about them together because they are books 2 and 3. So I read The Colour of Vengeance and The Price of Faith by Rob J. Hayes, the books 2 and 3 in the Ties That Bind trilogy, and me and Lisa read these for It's All About Fantasy. There are spoiler chats on both of our channels, make sure you check them out because they are full in depth of everything. But what I can tell you is that in the very first book, The Heresy Within, which is literally just behind me on my shelves, we are following multiple POVs for some very not nice people, but somehow Rob J. Hayes' writing just makes you fall in love with them. Like, I didn't even think I would ever really feel bad for murderers and thieves, but by gosh, that man can do that. And that is what these books did to me. I really enjoyed them. So I gave The Colour of Vengeance 4 stars and I gave The Price of Faith 5. And in my opinion, that is how it should be. The first book should be good, the second book should get better, then the third book should be the best. Because in theory, that is where the author has either found their stride with the series or found their stride with writing, as it's like their first series, or both of the above. And yeah, 5 stars, really loved this, really enjoyed the ending. They're very dark. There are a lot of triggers in these books, so please bear those in mind. I feel like the first book is a lot more dark and gruesome, but they're all pretty dark and gruesome, so yeah, just bear that in mind if you go into these books. And then I discovered another 5-star indie read, and that was Renia by Carl Forshaw. This author sent me this beautiful copy. He has signed it. Thank you so much. I'm so excited for the rest of this series. This is 5 stars for me. I loved it. I loved the way it was written. I loved the characters. I loved just like the general everything about this book. I had a really great time reading this. So our main character is actually called Renia, and she is given a task to transcribe these very secret, very hush-hush books, and that is where everything kind of goes wrong, if I'm completely honest. There is dark academia vibes in this. We have got almost like multiple POVs throughout, not just Renia's, where we're experiencing what other people are going through. These books have caused turmoil for another character in this book, and we watch him slowly descend into his own form of madness. There is the hint of betrayal in here, there is magic in here. Pretty much everything you want from a fantasy book is probably in here, and I really, really enjoyed it. But I loved it. I thought it was so good. So good, and I can't wait. I don't know how many books are going to be in this series. I know I've spoken to the author about it, but right now I think I'm blanking. It's probably like, I think he said like 9 books he has planned, which is bonkers. So I cannot wait to see what comes next, because the ending of this book makes me want answers. The next audiobook that I read was The Written by Ben Galley. Now I gave this one 3 stars, and I'm not 100% sure if it is because I didn't gel with the audiobook or because I'd just come off reading Those Left Behind and that was a really immersive audiobook. Maybe I would have preferred this one to be written. However, 3 stars, if you didn't know, for me, is still a good rating. It's a good book. I enjoyed what I read. It just didn't blow me away. So, The Written is the first book in a series, and I think it has about 4 books, but I'm not 100% sure at this moment in time. Our main character in this book is called Farden, and due to the mages in this world running out of time and options, he must go and make sure that Emanska does not fall into chaos. And he is tasked with tracking down an assassin and regaining a spell book before it falls into the wrong hands and the world is cast into shadow. Now this book does have meddling dragons. There is a really interesting magic system within this book. We've got tattooed mages. It is a really good book. I think I would benefit better though from this series reading it physically than listening to it. It could have also been the environment in which I'm listening to it, but overall 3 stars doesn't mean it's a bad one. And to be fair, I usually am quite difficult to please on the first book on a series, because that is where you're just learning the world and the characters, so don't let that put you off. We then have Searching for Zen by Albert T. Franklin, and unfortunately this was not for me. I hope it finds its audience, but I am not that. I gave this 1 star. I did not enjoy it. There are so many trigger warnings within this book that I think played into the role of why I didn't enjoy this book so much. The idea is that our main character Zen is given these powers and he can understand mankind and he meets all these people along the way, but there is a lot of sexual assault on different characters. There is a whole scene towards the end of the book that is not good for that, and I had no warnings prior to going into this about this, so I'm giving you those warnings. Tread carefully if you're going into this book for those reasons. I'm sure that there are many of you who read fantasy book. This is also an indie, by the way. Many of you who read fantasy and are okay with reading that in your books, and that is great. That is fine. Maybe this is the book for you, but unfortunately not for me. So yeah, unfortunately not for me. However, one book that is for me is The Ember Blade by Chris Wooding. I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed this. Again, audiobook, listened to this. Don't even know if that was good England, but you know, here we go. I really enjoyed this. I am so surprised with how much I enjoyed this, because at the time I wasn't really listening to or reading many big, chunky, heavy fantasy books. But this was so good. So our main character in this is called Aaron, or Aaron. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, and I'm really sorry if I'm saying it wrong. And he is a good boy. He follows the rules. But when his father is executed for treason, his whole world is turned upside down. Him and his best friend get thrown into a prison mine and are almost worked to death until they are rescued by a very mysterious figure. And this figure is actually oath-bound to protect him, despite the fact that he hates the person he is oath-bound to. And they just go through so much in this book. I want to read the sequel. I don't know if I'm going to read it physically though, or if I'm going to stick with the audiobook. I might read it physically, because at the minute and time that I'm filming this, I am loving reading big fantasy books. That's all I want to read. In-depth series. I do know that the sad thing about this book is that we don't know how many books are coming, and there's only 2 out. And I don't know when the next book is coming out. So that's also why I'm kind of putting it off a little bit. But I loved this. This was so good. Such a good fantasy read. In-depth, full characters, multiple POVs, band of strange, unlikely characters coming together to complete a quest. Say less. I will say though that The way the blurb reads when it says that he's rescued by a man and like all that doesn't happen until well into the book, I have to say. Like we are in it before they escape the mine. So bear that in mind. Sometimes I love to just switch it up as well, and this is probably the only mystery thriller book on this list, I think, and that is One of Us Is Back, which is the third and final book in this trilogy by Karen M. McManus. The first one being One of Us Is Lying, was made into a TV show, much as the stickers like to tell me on these books, which I don't enjoy. Don't enjoy permanent stickers. Anyways, I digress. This is the third and final book. I don't know why anyone lives in this town, if I'm completely honest. There are 3 books set here. The first one, we are following a range of characters and they go into detention and one of them does not walk out because he dies and they're all up for his murder. And I really enjoy it. These books, Karen M. McManus' writing has me turning pages, keeps me engaged. They're quick, they are so engaging for me personally, and not everyone will enjoy them, and I get that, that's cool. But when I want like a mystery thriller or like a palette cleanser, this is what I go to, because it's not a chunky fantasy, it keeps me engaged, and I'm so glad that they finished the trilogy out now and I can read the rest of her books. I have got her newest book currently sat on my shelf looking at me to be read, and I'm just holding my horses currently, but really enjoyed this. Really enjoyed the whole series actually. And if I didn't say, 4 stars. Another 4 stars is a Spiffbo 9 book, and that was Death's Disciple by Emma L. Adams. I finally finished it out. This book is so fun. It's not fun. It is fun, but they go through a lot in this book. I really enjoyed it. 4 stars. Really enjoy Emma's writing. I have got the sequel sat on my shelf that I need to read because the 3rd book is coming out very soon. And we're following our main character, Captain Yulla, who used to head up this section of the army where they would fly war drakes, and she saw something before they retired that just has never sat right with her, and then she is basically kicked out of her home that she has made for herself once she's retired by a war drake trying to kill her. And then she meets these disciples, she meets a disciple of life, she meets a disciple of the air, she is almost kidnapped, she is put through so much turmoil. And I love the fact that there's this trend going around on Twitter or X or whatever you call it now, where it's like, badly describe your book. And Emma said that this book, her bad description of her own book was, a woman never gets to complete her nap. And I felt that. But this is so good. I loved it. I really enjoy it. It's fairly chunky. Like, I don't feel like it feels chunky, but it's fairly chunky for what I was reading at that point. There is intrigue, there is mystery, there are war drakes, there is magic. I love the magic in this system. I love the magic system in this world. Honestly, I am just amalgamating words today. And that is the fact that there are multiple little collectives in this. So you've got the Disciples of Life, you've got the Disciples of Air, Fire, Death, hence the name, and they're all in connection with different gods. So that is really interesting. And the Disciples of Air can control air so that they essentially like can fly, and the Disciples of Life can communicate with their god of life and, like, you know, talk to animals and make things grow and make things die. Very clever. Really liked it. Really enjoyed it. Can't wait to continue the series. We have a couple of YA books as well that I've managed to read, because I'm actually enjoying listening to YA audio fantasy books at the minute, because they're just not necessarily as high stakes as, you know, your epic fantasies. And the first one that I'm going to talk about now is Song of Wraiths and Ruin by Roseanne A. Brown. This is dual POVs, so a boy and a girl. Obviously there's like some romanciness in there because it's just the trend that we're following. And we are following Malik and Karina. I have to check the names because I'm terrible with names. And Malik is basically shunned where he's from. He's not looked upon well. And Karina is a princess. Now Malik, when he manages to summon a demon has to strike a bargain with it to kill the princess in order to reverse what has happened to him and his family. And then Karina wants to bring back her dead mother, and she needs people to do that. So there is a trial in this book that bring these characters together. Love a good trial. I did give this book 3 stars. I thought it was alright. It was an alright book. It's well written, characters are okay. Romance is not for me. I'm intrigued to read the sequel, but I don't know when I will read the sequel, but I'm sure I will eventually. Now this YA, I was actually pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed it, and that was An Ember in the Ashes by Saba Tahir. I don't know why I'm surprised, because I think a lot of people enjoy this. I gave this 4 stars. Again, it's got split POV between a boy and a girl, and of course they will fall in love. But I listened to the audio of this and I pleasantly surprised, so pleasantly surprised. One of our main characters is Leia, and she's a scholar, which is the lowest cast of people within this world, and when her brother is arrested in the middle of the night for treason, she must join the rebels to try and get him back. Now the other perspective is Elias, and he works for this martial rule that keeps the scholars down, and he is actually planning to desert, but then he is made to take part in this contest, which is designed to choose the next martial emperor. Now I love a good trial book. I really enjoyed this. There is like I said, some intersecting bits. There is some really tough times that Leia has to go through, and I really feel for her. But I really want to continue with this series. There are 4 books in this series. The annoying thing is that I can't buy these covers because they have just released new ones. So I think the only way I can get these covers is if I buy a box set, which means I will have the first book twice. But in that case, I can probably pass this on to my friend who I try and get to read a lot of books with me. So there's a positive. And then I received an ARC for The Silver Blood Promise by James Logan. I actually listened to the audiobook after it had released because I got behind. The audiobook is actually really good. I gave this book 4 stars as well. This is the start to a new series, and our main character is called Lucan. He has been dishonorably kicked out of the school that he was in because he killed another student, and you know, so he's a bit disgraced. He's down in the dumps, and then when he discovers that his father has died but he's left him these very strange clues, he sets out on a quest to try and figure out what these clues mean. This leads him down a really weird path. He meets some interesting characters. I really liked, there was a young thief girl in this book. She was so funny. I really liked her, and I think she is what really added to my enjoyment of this book. But I'm intrigued to read the next book. I think it's going to be a good series. I've seen a lot of raving about this book. I would say it's good, but I'm not sure if it's as good as people say. Is that mean to say? I don't think so. I think that's just an honest opinion. I enjoyed it. It was 4 stars, so obviously it did blow off a sock, but not both. So I'm hoping that the next book is going to add even more to this series. Now I was really lucky to get one of these ARCs, and I'm so glad I've got it on my shelves, and that is Evocation by S.T. Gibson. I know that this has polarised a lot of people. Some people love it, some people hate it. I was pleasantly surprised and gave it 4 stars because I had a good old time with this. I am not a romance reader. This is a romance book, so maybe that's why I scored it higher, because I'm not as critical on romance books because I don't really read them. Maybe that's something to do with it. But the thing that I loved, and that is what gave this book 4 stars to me, was not the romance at all. It was the friendship between 2 of the characters. So we're following 3 characters. We've got David, we've got Moira, and we've got Reese. Now David and Reese are exes. They used to date. They had a very toxic relationship, and they have since broken up. And at the start of this book, they haven't actually spoken to each other for 6 months because Reese was fed up of David's bull, pretty much, and Moira is Reese's wife. So in this book, David is discovering something. He is listening to some weird voice. Now this is very much a magical book, so David does seances and talks to the dead, and him and Reese are in the secret society where they do like big rituals and, you know, conjure things, and Moira does traditional like tarot cards, and they're all basically in touch with that like third eye community. And David becomes sick. Something isn't right, and he reaches out to Reese for help, because that's what he always does when he is in trouble. Now, Reese doesn't want to put up with him, isn't too sure, but when David turns up at his house and even Moira's like, something's not quite right, they come to a decision, Reese and Moira, that they will try and help David, but they're not going to get entangled in him. They're not going to do that. And throughout the course of this book, David and Moira develop a really beautiful friendship, which I really, really liked. There is the talk of polygamy in this book, and for me, originally, I requested the arc because it sounded great. It sounded like something I might enjoy, and I'm also trying to branch out a little bit. But then I heard the talk of polygamy, and I was like, oh, well, I'm not sure if that's something that I want to read. Never read it. Don't know if I want to read that. And I will say, it's not even really in this book. At all. There is a really nice conversation actually between Moira and Reese about how it would work should David be brought into the mix a little bit, which I thought was really good, because rather than something like that being sprung on a person or just kind of assumed, I really appreciated that the author took the time to kind of weave that storyline into the whole story, that they were going to talk about it, they set boundaries. I really liked that. And then, yeah, there's a romancy element to it, but overall I gave this 4 stars. I'm pleasantly surprised, and I am looking forward to getting the next one, if I'm honest. I think it's going to be, if it's like this, I think it could be still a good time. Then the next book I read was called Heroes of Siege by Toni Johnson, and unfortunately, again, this was an indie book that wasn't for me. I gave it 2 stars. I did not gel with the characters or the writing style for this. It is almost medieval in its setting. At the start we were at a joust, and but we've also got like a really interesting sprinkling of magic as well. We've got dragon riders who protect the realm, we have got magic going around, and right at the start of this book the city is sieged by these horrible evil monsters, and it sends the city into chaos. Now this story is one of many, so it's kind of like short stories that all come together to make this one big novel, which makes sense. So if you want to read it, you can check it out. It's an interesting read. Like I said, unfortunately, I just didn't gel with it, which is not ideal, but it does happen. Then I saw that I had some time left on my BookBee trial, so I thought, why not try a book that I have recently received in one of my book boxes and try and cross one of them off the list to see if I want to continue, or to see if these books actually work for me. And so I chose The Temptation of Magic by Megan Scott, because I have received this very beautiful Fairy Loot edition, and I was intrigued to see if this would be one I enjoyed. I gave it 4 stars, guys. This also has a romance element in it, and I gave it 4 stars. We've got Nicole and we've got Kyan. I think that's how you say his name. Kyan? I don't know. But unfortunately, they're on 2 different sides. So Nicole is an Imperial, and she's got these powers that basically can make her kill any supernatural, which is amazing, if I'm honest. But if she does wake up this need, if she does need to kill something, she will then be found by the Wake, which is the government that kind of governs all of the supernatural. Some of you are allowed, some of you aren't, and Imperials are meant to basically sign up to become soldiers in the Wake to find more Imperials and bring them back to the fold, or kill them, because you can't be like a free Imperial, which is awful. But when Nicole and Kyan, who is one of these soldiers, meet, Nicole knows that she cannot let him know she is an Imperial, so she lies about what she is. I believe she says she's a seer, and she and him have to work together, and they do. There is romance. There is adult romance in this book, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed their character arc. I didn't find their romance like annoying or cringy or anything like that, which is usually my problem with romance. Maybe that's my problem. Maybe I'm just reading the wrong ones. I don't think I'm a romance girly, but maybe I could be. But I really enjoyed this. I will say though that some of the scenes in this that were adult, I was listening to them in the wrong place. I was on site. It was very busy. There was a lot of people. It was not ideal, but looking forward to reading the sequel for this. Guys, we have another 5-star, and this one was very kindly sent to me by the Angry Robot publishing team. Caroline, thank you so much for this. This is The Branded by Joe Riccioni. 5 stars, guys. Like, loved this. This is set in a world, this is kind of like dystopian. So if you are branded, you are lower, you suffer with diseases, you just all round are a weaker human being. If you are pure, so you have no brands at all, you are stronger, you are just better, and you are more revered. If you are a pure woman, you are essentially used for breeding stock, and that is where we start. So we have our main character Nara, and we follow her throughout this whole book, and her sister Osha were living out in the forest in the middle of nowhere, and unfortunately their grandmother gets killed, and they run to this settlement where pures are revered and branded are not, and they claim refuge, essentially. And because they are checked and no one can find any brands, they are then put in with the pure girls, and they go to school with them, and they are taught how to, you know, essentially be a good housewife. That is essentially all these people care about. Being a housewife, looking after your husband, and having kids. They basically become breeding machines. Now, there is an issue when Nara, she kind of sets these events in motion, but Nara is outed to be actually branded. So she is kicked out of this pure encampment. She is sent to live with the Lessers. She is devastated. Her sister is still with the pure. She is no longer allowed to associate with them. But when her and her sister are actually kidnapped, they must fight for survival, and oh wow, I really loved this. I had such a good time. Nara is such a strong character. There are times where she is whiny and annoying, but that's just genuinely what happens anyways. But she is so determined, she is so strong, I just loved Nara. I loved reading Nara. There is a second book to this. It is a duology. The second book is coming out soon. I cannot wait for the second book to come out. I need it. I need it. I need to know what happens. Oh, I need to know what happens. We all, like, both characters obviously fall in love, and there's like that, and oh my god, there is a point though where Nara, I can't say it because it's a spoiler, but with the love interest for Nara, there is actually 2. This girl goes through the ringer. She is in love with 2 people, not at the same time. But one of them screws her over at the start, and then one of them screws her over at the end, and just, what the heck? Right, anyways, yeah, really enjoyed this, need the second book. I then read another arc, and that was Girls Like Her. I gave this 4 stars. This was a ride. This is like a crime, thriller, mystery, YA book, and it's actually got a really interesting concept, because our main character, she has it rough. Like, she's up for trial and she has it so rough, and throughout this book, you know, her counsellor and this woman that is sent to like come in and look after, like try and get her to talk, like a therapist, is trying to get her to kind of tell her tale and kind of come to terms with what's happened, and they go into trial. But there is a twist at the end of this book which made it 4 stars. Originally I was like, can I read this? I don't know. There's a lot of triggers in this as well for like sexual assault, pimps as well. So she is basically used as a prostitute in this book, and by this man who is essentially her pimp, but she doesn't really come to terms with that. She still thinks that he like loves her and all this stuff, and it's very iffy. It's very real. It is very much, unfortunately, what happens to kids, and it can happen to kids, and it's so sad. But yeah, there's a twist at the end of this book, and I was just like, wow, okay, that is what gives this book the 4-star status, because I was not expecting that to happen, and I was not expecting those change of events. So yeah, really enjoyed that. That should be out by now, actually. We're almost there, guys. I read the Final Strife as well. I gave this 4 stars. I listened to this audibly and really enjoyed it. The first part of this book, I was like, why are we reading this? This is a little bit info dumpy. There's a lot to it. When are we getting to the story? And we eventually get to the story, and oh my gosh, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the politics. There is a trial as well in this book, so obviously that's going to be a winner for me. As I keep saying, love a trial, love politics at the minute. In this book, we are following, our main character is Scylla, and the world for this is so interesting. So you are basically classed by blood. If you've got red blood, you have the blood of the elite. You are known as an Ember. If you've got blue blood, you are known as lowers. You are the dusters. And if you have clear blood, you are nothing. You are invisible. You are the ghostings. And this book follows our main character, Shyla, who is actually an Ember, but she has been raised a duster. There was this whole event that happened years ago when Shyla was a baby, where the Sandstorm, who were the rebel group, switched Ember babies with duster babies. So they left blue-blooded children in place of their own children, and they took the Embers and they raised them to become an army. They raised them to fight back in a trial known as the Actabar, and the Actabar chooses the next people in power. So Shyla was meant to take part in that, but unfortunately she never makes it to the Actabar, so she has to become the trainer for a Nor, who has her own secret. And it was really good. I really enjoyed this. I was like, it'll be alright, I'm sure. And it was alright. It was better than alright. I really enjoyed this. I loved the politics. I loved the rebels. I loved the characters. I loved the betrayal. So good. So good. Need to read the sequel, actually. I did have it from my library to read this month, but unfortunately I haven't listened to it, so I've run out of time and I've had to return it. So maybe I'll read the next one physically. I don't know. I do have it on my shelf, and the 3rd one comes out this year, which is the finale to this trilogy. So need to get on that. Final 3. Legacy of Ash. I am reading this with the lovely Lisa for It's All About Fantasy. We are doing a spoiler-filled live show for this, but when this video goes up, it won't have gone live. Make sure you come back and watch it on Lisa's channel. We will be going through all of our thoughts and feelings. This is a chunky book. This follows so many perspectives. We have got politics, we have got action, we have got a battle that lasts probably well over 100 pages. If any of that strikes your fancy, you need to check this book out. I can't really go into like the whole ins and outs of this book because it is kind of complex with so many different characters and plot lines intercepting, but there is... Oh, it's just so good. And on the back, I will say, this says Game of Thrones meets Last Kingdom. So if any of that sparks your fancy, you might want to read this. But I feel like I'll be able to give you more ins and outs in the live show when I can spoil stuff and relationships and politics and plans, because there's just so much in this book. Then I finally managed to finish Death Note Volume 1, and I gave this 3 stars. I will say, and Lisa has told me that I need to just kind of brush over it. There's a lot of, like, you know, sexism and stuff within manga, which I didn't realise because I've never read it. But this is essentially following one guy who finds this notebook, which is known as the Death Note, and if you write anyone's like name in this book, within like 30 minutes they'll die of a heart attack. And he is originally, like, I kind of got it, he was killing criminals, and then like this task force gets involved because he's killing people, and obviously killing people is bad and wrong no matter who they are, and then he just kind of amps it up, and I was just like, really? I do want to read the sequel. I have got the 2nd book on my shelf. I know there's quite a few of these actually, so I'm not too sure where this is gonna go. Like, surely, is he gonna get caught? Is it gonna take them like 6 books to catch him? I don't know. I'm intrigued, but yeah. 3 stars. I will continue the series. as and when I feel like it. And then the final book that I finally managed to finish, because it has taken me so long to finish this, is The Darkness Before Them by Matthew Ward. This I was sent as part of a book tour for last year. I did start it and never finished it, unfortunately, and I have been sent the sequel as well, which I need to read. So we are following Katia in this book, and right at the start of this book we are thrown into a heist. I really enjoyed this book. I know I have seen reviews from people who have struggled with this, especially if they read Legacy first. They are very different in the fact that Legacy, I feel like, is a lot more complex. There's a lot more to it. It's really dark. There's lots of war and stuff, whereas this, it's still dark. There is murder and fighting and all of that in this, but I don't because I don't feel like we concentrate on as many people in this as that. Maybe that's, I don't know. Either way, I still love this. I still gave it 4 stars. But yeah, our main character is Kat. She is a talented thief. She has got an interesting tattoo on her arm, and in this world there is magic where you basically capture like people's essence as they die, and if you're a criminal you get forced to work, and you work in loads of different ways. Like, people power, like, there are spirits that power lights, there are people that power the Kolios, which are basically just bones with some form of essence inside them, and they will work for a master. It's actually really interesting. There's action, there's politics, there's so much to this, and Kat ends up working with the rebels, which is really interesting. I really enjoyed this. I need to read all of these sequels. I keep starting series and then not actually continuing them, or not reading many sequels, which is not ideal. I think I've started like a good 20 odd series this year and read like 2 or 3 sequels. Like, that's not good, is it? But yeah, that is the final book to talk to you in this massive recent reads. Hopefully none of them will ever be this big again, unless I have read that many books in a month. And the likelihood of that is quite slim. So I hope you've stuck with me. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, please give it a like. Really supports me and my channel. Leave me a comment down below of a book that you have recently gave 5 stars to. I'd love to know. Is it a recommendation you would make for me? Let me know. If you want to just leave me an emoji, leave me any star emojis. Obviously every book I read is rated. And if you want to see more of me, please consider subscribing down below and ringing that notification bell to get notified every single time I upload new videos. I'm currently taking part in TBR Quest. I'm doing vlogs for that. If you're interested, make sure you go back and watch some of them. They're really fun. And otherwise, that is everything for today's video. I hope you're having an amazing day, and I'll see you soon in the next one. Bye.